beautiful Kli Yakar. Kli Yakar was a Talmud, a disciple of the Maharal of Prague. He was the rabbi of Prague after the Maharal. And he says a beautiful insight. So let me give you the background. The Torah says that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu saying that he should speak to the Jewish people and instruct the following. It says, Nekoim nikmas b'nei Yisrael me'es hamidyonim. Revenge the vengeance of the Jewish people from the Midianites. Now, what's the background to this? Last week and the week before we had Balak and Pinchas, where we have the story that after Bilam was unsuccessful in cursing the Jewish people, he advised Balak to send in the girls of Midian and entice the Jewish people with immorality and idolatry of a Zorah and Gilo Arayas. And he said Hashem doesn't like that, and that's going to cause the Yidden to suffer. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. There was a plague that broke out, and 24,000 people died in that plague, in that event. And that all came from the Midianites, a bit the Moabites as well, but mainly the Midianites. And then, of course, Pinchas came and he killed the leader of Shimon for acting immorally, and the plague stopped. That was the whole story of Pinchas, as we learned last week, and Hashem rewarded him. This week, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to wage a war against Midian, and that would be the war against the Midianites, and he says, revenge the cause of the Bnei Yisrael. Nikmas Bnei Yisrael, the vengeance of the Jewish people, because of what they did to the Jewish people. Okay, and they did, and they went out, and they fought Midian, and they won, and so on. Then later on in the Pasuk, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to talk to the Jewish people about this instruction, he changes it slightly, he modifies it slightly. And he says, he doesn't say Nikmas B'nai Yisrael, he doesn't say the vengeance of the Jewish people. He says Nikmas Hashem, the vengeance of God. Which was interesting. Now, he right away went and told the Jewish people to do this. And Rashi says a very interesting thing. When Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to wage this war, he said, wage this war, and ve'achar te'osef alamecha, right after the war, then you will pass away. And that's what happened. The war was waged, and then Moshe Rabbeinu blesses the Jewish people, and then he passes away before they go into Eretz Yisrael. Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu did this with great simcha, with joy, even though he heard from Hashem that his passing away is dependent on this war. So you would imagine that he would procrastinate and delay it as much as he possibly can in order to delay his own passing. Nevertheless, he didn't do that. Afal pisha shama Moshe, even though Moshe Rabbeinu heard, says Rashi, that misosa, his death, is dependent on this war. Also besimcha, he did it with joy, and he didn't delay. Says the Kli Yakar, how does Moshe Rabbeinu know that he did it with simcha, with joy? Maybe he just did it because Hashem told him he had to. Maybe he wasn't happy about it at all. Maybe he was very upset about it, in fact, that he had to do this instruction from Hashem. But nevertheless, he did it right away, because that's what you have to do. If you get instruction from Hashem, you have to carry it out right away. You can't procrastinate. So how do we know? We understand that he did it, even though he knew that his death was dependent on it. But how do we know he did it with simcha? So the Kli Yakar connects this with the fact that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to avenge the vengeance of the Bnei Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu, when he repeated it, he said not Nikmas Yisrael, but Nikmas Hashem, the cause of Hashem, not the cause of the Jewish people. And he explains the following novel idea, and he says the following. The Midianim actually did two things. One was really more against God, and one was a consequence against the Jewish people. Against God was the fact that they caused the Jewish people to sin, to serve idols, to be immoral with the daughters of Midian. And then, of course, the Midianim also went against the Jewish people because of them, 24,000 Jewish people fell in a plague. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go and avenge the cause of the Jewish people. Because what they did to me, Hashem says, I can be moichel, I can forgive. Because there are many sins that people do and Hashem forgives. Sometimes there's a consequence and Hashem forgives afterwards, but Hashem forgives ultimately. Therefore, the Iker war, the main part of the war, is really to fight Midian because they damaged the Jewish people, not because they went against me, says Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu is about, says the Kli Yakar, Moshe Rabbeinu is about to communicate this to the Jewish people. And Moshe Rabbeinu thinks to himself the following: if I come and tell them to wage the war against Midian, and I repeat the instruction of Hashem that I'm going to wage this war and then I'm going to pass away, and I tell them exactly the words of Hashem, that it's nikmas b'nei Yisrael, it's the avenging for the Jewish people's suffering, and the Jewish people know that this war was going to lead to my passing, they are going to want to procrastinate this war. They're going to want not to fight it. Why? The Jewish people, even though they complained a number of times through the Midbar, but ultimately they were beautiful. Ultimately they loved Moshe Rabbeinu. Ultimately they did not want Moshe Rabbeinu to pass on. We see this later in Chumash as well. That they didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to pass away. They loved Moshe Rabbeinu. So therefore what would have happened is they would have actually procrastinated. They would have delayed. They would have stalled. And Moshe Rabbeinu would have been able to live a little bit longer. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew that that could happen. And if he had done that, he would have been fulfilling Hashem's command by conveying the instruction to fight the Midian, and he would live longer. But because he was ready to do the commandment of Hashem with joy, and he wanted the Jewish people to do it right away, he didn't care the fact that he was going to pass away afterwards, he changed the words and he said to the Bnei Yisrael, you've got to go and fight a war to avenge the cause of Hashem. What they did to Hashem, the fact they went against Hashem, that is different. That they don't know if Hashem can forgive. They can't forgive on behalf of Hashem. And therefore, they would have had to go right away to avenge the cause of Hashem. And they would have done it right away. And they did it right away, which of course hastened Moshe Rabbeinu's passing. Says the Kli Yakar, that's how Rashi knows that Moshe Rabbeinu did it with simcha. Because if he just did it without joy, he would have kept the instruction intact, and that would have caused the Jews to delay because they would have forgiven. But because he changed the words and he said it's Nikmas Hashem, it's the vengeance of Hashem, that's why they had to do it right away. And even though Moshe Rabbeinu knew that would bring his death quicker, he still did it because he was enthusiastic and passionate about listening to Hashem, and that's how we know that he did it with simcha. Okay, that's a beautiful idea. Now, in addition to all of this, I want to explain to you something that is explained in Hasidic philosophy about this war. What's the spirit? Every war that's fought in the Chumash also has a spiritual connotation. What is the connotation about fighting against Midian? What does Midian represent that we have to spiritually fight against? So in Hasidic philosophy it is explained, the Hasidus, that the word Midian comes from the word Modon and Meriva. Modon means division, conflict, disunity. And Hashem was saying that the greatest threat to the Jewish people, the greatest destruction of the Jewish people, is the concept of Midian, disunity, conflict. Conflict just means hating other people, not intolerance of other people. Says Hashem, Nekoim nikmas b'nei Yisrael meisa Midyanim, go and fight Midian. Every Yid has to go to this war. We have to fight disunity. We have to fight machloikas. We have to fight conflict. And this is the spiritual meaning of this war because of the word Midyanim, which comes from that word Modon, which means division and conflict. Now, of course, we always read this around the 3 weeks, and this is so amazingly connected because we all know the famous idea that the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The Golus that we're in came from sinas chinam, came from baseless hatred, division, conflict, and so on, and therefore we have to fight it by baseless love, avas chinam. And that's how we bring the Geula closer. And of course, during the 3 weeks and the 9 days, when we focus on the Beis Hamikdash, and we focus and reflecting on the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and we're mourning and feeling the pain of not having redemption, not having the Beis Hamikdash, this is a primary concept to focus on, the idea of not having conflict and not having division, but rather having achdus and being absolutely united, embracing everyone with love and with tolerance. Which ties into another thing that we read this Shabbos, which is amazing. Which is, this week is Mattos and Massei. Mattos and Massei means it's a double parsha, and we read both Mattos and Massei. What we just talked about the Midian war, is in Mattos. But in Massei we read a different pasuk. And I want to note that it's important to realize that this year, which is not common, we're reading it on Shabbos, which is also Rosh Chodesh Av. And we read in the Parsha about Rosh Chodesh Av. What do we read? We read about the passing of Aaron HaKohen. Now, Aaron HaKohen, we read about his passing a number of Parshas ago. That's in Parshas Chokas. But it's repeated in Parshas Massei because Parshas Massei goes through all the 42 journeys that the Jewish people journeyed in the Midbar. And one of them is a place called Hor HaHor. That's where Aaron HaKohen died. And the Torah mentions it. And the Torah says the following. The Torah says, and I must just share with you an amazing thing. There is nowhere in the Torah except for this instance that the Torah explicitly says when someone passed away. We know, for example, that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on the 7th of Adar. It does not say it in the Torah. We know it from the Midrashim, from Chazal, and so on. But it's not in the Torah. The only yortzeit that is explicit in the Torah is the passing of Aaron, which is Rosh Chodesh Av, this coming Shabbos, when we actually read about the passing of Aaron on his yortzeit. It's a very rare thing. And it says, B'chodesh HaChamishi was the 5th month, Be'echad LaChodesh, the 1st of the month, i.e. this Shabbos, and we're going to read that pasuk this Shabbos. That's when Aaron HaKohen passed away. That's his yortzeit. Who was Aaron? Aaron, we know, was someone that excelled in unity. When he passed away, it says, Kol Beis Yisrael, every single Yid, they mourned for him for long, even longer than they did for Moshe Rabbeinu, because he brought such love and peace between people. He brought resolution to conflicts between man and wife, between litigants, between people who are fighting with each other. That's what he used to do. And that's why in the Pirkei Avos we read that Hillel told us that Heve mitalmidov shel Aaron, that we should be the disciples of Aaron. Oyev shalom, we should love peace. Roidav shalom, we should pursue peace. And then the Mishnah says something very beautiful which highlights the type of person Aaron was. It says, Oyev esabrios, he loved the creations, umekorvan la Torah, and he brought them close to Torah. What does that mean, he loved creations? That's a funny way to describe people. He loved Yidden, he loved people, what does it mean? So in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains a beautiful thing. He says, brios means a person who is not filled with Torah mitzvahs, a person that maybe is not a nice person, a person that actually doesn't have a lot of virtues. You can't really praise that person. The only maila, the only greatness that person has is that he's created by Hashem. That's it. Brios, he's a creation. And Aaron HaKohen loved everyone so much so that Oyev Esabrios, he loved the most simplest, the most empty of people, the most negative of people. But he loved them because they are created by Hashem, because they have an neshama. And therefore, he wanted to make peace between them, and he wanted to embrace them with love, and he also wanted to bring them close, of course, as a result, to Hashem in a greater way, because he loved them, not because he wanted to impose anything on them, but because he loved them, and that's why he wanted to bring them close. Now, the Lubavitcher Rebbe points out in the Sikh an amazing thing, and this actually is hinted in Aaron's name. Aaron's name is Aleph, Hey, Reish, Nun. The Aleph and Hey, he explains, stands for Ahava, love. The Reish stands for Rabba, Ahava Rabba, a great love. Aaron HaKohen excelled in love. Ahava Rabba, he had an amazing love. What's a Nun? The last letter of Aaron. A Nun means that a Nun is a letter that starts off at the same level of other letters but drops all the way down. It's got a very long leg and it goes lower than average letters. That's a Nun. A final Nun we're talking about, because it's the end of the word, Aharoin. He says, what's the symbolism of the Nun? The symbolism of the Nun is that he had such an Ava Rabbah, such a high level of love, but yet he had the ability to apply that love all the way down to people on the lowest level of character and of Yiddishkeit. That's the Nun. That was the greatness of Aaron. He was a great tzaddik. He possessed an amazing love of Hashem, love of Yidden and all that. But to apply it is something different. To apply it to people who don't deserve or don't seem not to deserve love, or who are annoying or full of machloikas, whatever the case is, that's a difficult thing. But Aaron did that. Aaron was filled with love in his heart, but he was able to then apply it and bring it all the way down to the lowest level of connection to other people. That was Aaron HaKohen. And that's so interesting, therefore, that Aaron HaKohen's yortzeit is on the 1st of Av, the beginning of the 9 days. It's got to do with the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, because that's the call of the hour. The call of the hour in the next few next week or two, especially starting from Shabbos, the first of Av, is to increase in unity, to reach out to people who we don't always talk to reach out to help someone that annoys us, to learn that art of just loving another Yid because they're Yid, because they're created by Hashem, that's it. And therefore, Makarov to help them come close to the Torah as part of the love. Not because you want to insult them or offend them. No, because you love them. You want to bring them close to the Torah and make them share the light of Torah mitzvahs, ourselves, of course, with them. Bring it all the way down to the most simplest of people. And increasing in unity and increasing in love and increasing in achdus, of course, is the catalyst, hopefully, to bring the Mashiach, the Geula, the redemption from Mashiach, much, much closer in Mitzvah this year. So we shouldn't even have to fast and observe Tisha B'Av, but we should have the Geula Shlema B'mheira B'yomeinu. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and a very good Shabbos.
Recording stopped.